Hey, Chef Bates, welcome back. It's time to do the dishes. I know you hate dishes. I hate dishes. Actually, I don't hate dishes. I just lied to you. I don't hate dishes at all. I find it kind of relaxing at this point in my life. Let's be honest, in a commercial kitchen, that's a lot of our time is spent on washing pots, pans, plates, knives, forks, cutting boards, all this stuff. So we're going to talk about dishwashing programs in this little mini unit. And someone's going to ask me, why do you need to know about this stuff? Why? Why can't I just go in there and do it? Well, here's why. Let's pretend that you have been hired as an executive sous chef, and the executive chef walks you into his kitchen and he says, hey, look over there at the dish pit. What's wrong? And if you aren't able to look at what's happening and know what's wrong, he's not going to hire you because as a food safety professional, you have to know that kind of thing. And I don't want you to get fired on your first day. That's your first big boy job, your first big girl job. You're making $80,000 a year. You don't want to get fired because you forgot that a dishwashing area has to have a well-planned layout. It has to have a separate area nearby for washing hands. You don't want to get fired for not knowing that it has to have a sufficient water supply, especially hot water. We learned that last chapter. You don't want to get fired because there's no 2 or 3 compartment sink and you don't notice, because you'll need a 2 or 3 compartment sink for cleaning pots and pans that won't fit in the dish machine. The dishwashing machine must have a water pressure and temperature gauge, that it's got to have protected storage area for clean tableware and utensils, that the staff have been trained to operate all of it. I want you to have a job. That's why you need to learn it. A job. Dishwashing machines sanitize by using either hot water or a chemical sanitizing solution. High temperature machines use hot water to clean and sanitize. If the water's not hot enough, items aren't sanitized, right? Extremely hot water can bake food onto the item, so if you have a high temperature dishwashing machine, it's really important you scrub those plates before you put them in. The temperature of the final sanitizing rinse must be at least 180 degrees Fahrenheit, like you see in the picture. For stationary rack, single temperature machines like your dishwashing machine that you have at home, it's got to get to 165 degrees Fahrenheit. The dishwasher must have a built-in thermometer that checks water temperature at the manifold. This is where the water sprays into the tank. The dishwasher must have a built-in thermometer which checks water temperature. It's gotta. Chemical sanitizing machines are also really effective. They clean and sanitize items at much lower temperatures than a high-temperature dishwashing machine, but they require very specific chemicals, so it's important that you follow manufacturer's guidelines carefully. You know, I'm not even going to re-record that. I stumbled all over myself. You can read. Operate your dishwasher according to the manufacturer's recommendations and keep it in good repair, please. Here's a couple of general guidelines. You're going to clean that machine as often as needed, checking it at least once a day. Clear the spray nozzles of food in foreign objects. Remove mineral deposits when needed. Fill the tanks with clean water and make sure detergent and sanitizer dispensers are filled. Dishes must always be scraped off and rinsed prior to running them through the dishwasher. Always. If necessary, you could even pre-soak them, especially if they've got dried-on food. Pre-soaking's your friend. Load dish racks so the water spray will reach all surfaces. Don't overload your dish rack, and never ever use a towel to dry items after they've gone through the dish machine. This will contaminate them. Make sure they are completely dry before stacking or storing. Don't stack 2 wet plates together, please. Don't do it. Let them air dry first. Sheesh. Operations that are using high-temperature dishwashing machines have special guidelines that they got to follow. You have to provide your staff with an easy and quick way to measure the surface temperatures of items being sanitized. Easiest way is like in the picture, there's a maximum registering thermometer. You just run it through the dishwasher. It tells you how hot it got. You're going to have to be prepared to take quick action if you discover that your dishwashing machine is not getting hot enough. Because sometimes dishwashing machines need to take a break, and the mechanic has to come out and give them a massage to make them work again. If that happens, you're going to have to switch over to a 3-compartment sink to wash all your stuff. The method you use to check the dishwasher must provide an irreversible record of the highest temperature reached during the sanitizing rinse. This is very important, because if somebody gets sick in your restaurant, you want to be able to prove that it wasn't because you weren't checking your dishwasher. Heat-sensitive tapes, those are good tools too. We talked about that like 3 chapters ago. You knew all this stuff. 3-compartment sinks must be set up correctly before use. That means you're going to have to clean and sanitize the entire sink, including the drain boards on either side of the sinks prior to use. Here is what I've noticed students do. Because they don't clean their sink at home before they fill it up with soapy water, they assume they don't need to clean the sink at school before they fill it up with soapy water, and this is dumb. First, clean and sanitize, then fill the sinks. You're going to fill your first sink with detergent and water. That water temperature needs to be at least 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Check it from time to time to make sure it's that hot. Fill the second sink with clean water. You don't actually have to fill up your rinse sink with clean water if you're going to be spray rinsing them, with a little hosey doodad. But, fill it up with clean rinse water. The third sink is for sanitizer, and you're going to fill that up. Check the concentration with a test strip and make sure that it's there. Somewhere in that area, you need to have a clock with a second hand so food handlers can time how long items have been in the sanitizer, because they need to be in there for most sanitizers 30 whole seconds, and that's a long time. Quick note, let's say you run out of sanitizer. You can sanitize using hot water in a 3-compartment sink, but that means you're going to have to get the water up to 171 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, there are a lot of hot water tanks that aren't going to give you water that hot. But if you are using hot water as a means to sanitize, you're going to have to soak those dishes for 30 seconds, and you're going to have some means of testing the water regularly to make sure it stays hot. Because even if it goes in at 171 degrees Fahrenheit, after 10 minutes, it's not there anymore. And I got to tell you, this method is rare. 171 degrees Fahrenheit water is going to scald the hands of your dishwashing team, and they will sue you. They will sue you for having cooked fingers. Regardless of what you use, make sure you follow the guidelines previously discussed for sanitizers and all manufacturers' recommendations. All of them, every one. So what are the proper ways to wash dishes? I have kids laugh at me every time this comes up because they're like, I just know how you wash dishes, chef. Probably not. Number 1, scrape items before you wash them, please. Do not put a dish that has a bunch of food on it down into your sink of soapy water. That's dumb. You're going to wash those items in the first sink after they've been rinsed or scraped. Use a brush, a cloth towel, whatever you need to loosen the dirt. Change the water in detergent when the suds are gone. Hey, there's a good idea. If you don't see any bubbles, that water isn't, soapy. Surely you knew that. You knew that. Okay, rinse the items in the second sink, or you can spray them. You can dip them. You just want to make sure all the traces of food and detergent are gone. If you're going to dip your items to rinse them off, change the water if it seems to be sudsy. If the soap is starting to get too much into your rinse thing, you're going to have to change that water. 4, sanitize the items. Change the sanitizing solution when the temperature of the water or the sanitizer concentration falls below the requirements. And don't ever rinse the item after you've sanitized it. This makes no sense. Don't rinse off the sanitizer. The sanitizer is there to kill the bugs. You rinse it off, no bug death. Kill the bugs. Murder them. Step 5, you're going to air dry that stuff. Do not put it away wet. Do not use a towel to dry the items. That'll contaminate them. Congratulations, everything's washed. Let's put it away right, please. Once your utensils, your tableware, and equipment have been cleaned and sanitized, they must be stored in a way that will protect them from pests, contamination, dirt, and moisture. To do that, you're going to have to do 3 things. Store them 6 inches off the floor. Everything's 6 inches off the floor. This is no exception. Clean and sanitize drawers and shelves before items are stored. If you walk into our equipment closet and you open up some of those cubbies that are holding all of our tools and you look in the bottom of them, you will be grossed out. My students have such a hard time remembering that you have to clean and sanitize where you're putting this stuff, not just the thing itself. What's the point of cleaning and sanitizing a spoon and putting it into a dirty box? It's just dirty again. Jesus. Store glasses and cups upside down on a clean and sanitized shelf or rack. Silverware has its own very special rules. Flatware and utensils have to be stored with their handles up so staff can pick them without touching a food contact surface. You want your employees to be able to pick up a fork without actually touching the tines of the fork. That's going to help prevent cross-contamination and the transfer of pathogens. You're going to clean and sanitize trays and carts that are used to carry clean tableware and utensils. Do that regularly. And cover every food contact surface between use to prevent against grease condensation and dust. So that giant stand mixer we have in the bakery? We cover it. That big cart full of plates? It stays covered. We want to cover everything that is a food contact surface regularly, usually with plastic. It'll prevent dust getting into your cookies, and nobody wants a dusty cookie. Nobody. And if you do, you're weird. I mean, seriously. Okay, so this is going to be a little different. What normal people call washcloths, or worse yet, they call them rags, ServSafe calls wiping cloths. Wiping cloths are often used in operations to wipe up food spills and to wipe down equipment surfaces. There are 2 types of wiping cloths that are used in commercial kitchens: wet wiping cloths and dry wiping cloths. Each one has its own requirements. Don't ever use cloths that are meant for wiping up food spills for any other purpose. I think this will make more sense in just a second. But just let's start off with a very basic idea. In the kitchen, we have wet cloths and we have dry cloths. Cool? Moving on. Wet wiping cloths are the ones you probably know all about. You're used to this. It's an absorbent cloth and you use it for cleaning counters, equipment, floors, small children, puppies, just about anything that you can get to stay still. Wet wipe cloth, that's what you do. Store your wet wiping cloth in a sanitizing solution between uses, not folded up and sitting on the counter. Store it inside the sanitizing solution. You're going to have to change that solution when it no longer meets requirements for the sanitizer being used. For most sanitizers, this is every 2 to 4 hours. You have to change your sanitizer. Or if it becomes contaminated or dirty. I mean, if you're wiping up some chicken guts that splashed onto your counter, change the sanitizer before you use the solution to prep a cutting board for making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. That just makes sense. In fact, you should always keep cloths that come in contact with raw meat, fish, and poultry separate from all your other cleaning cloths. So, first up, wet wiping cloths, they're the ones we clean with. Dry cloths, on the other hand, are something that's very just restaurant. One of the differences between commercial kitchens and home kitchens is this: restaurants use dry wiping cloths. We use them to put the final touch on plates before the dish is served to a guest, such as wiping a plate's rim of food drips, like you see the chef doing in the picture. Dry wiping cloths used for this purpose must be kept dry while in use, and you got to put a little bit of extra effort in to make sure that you change your dry wiping cloth if it starts to get too much food on it. It can't be visibly dirty. A busy commercial kitchen will go through hundreds of dry wiping cloths on a Friday night just because you're constantly wiping down your plates to make sure they look beautiful for your guests. Dry wiping cloths, don't ever get them wet. Send them to the laundry room if they're visibly dirty. And the last thing we're going to talk about in this little section is cleaning non-food contact surfaces. This is a really brief sort of a section because, there's lots of surfaces in the commercial kitchen that don't ever come in contact with food. They're also known as non-food contact surfaces, which seems to be a little uncreative. Examples are floors, walls, ceilings, equipment exteriors like the outside of your refrigerator. That is not a food contact surface. It doesn't need to be sanitized. Because they are not food contact surfaces, they, of course, don't need to be sanitized. However, they do need to be cleaned regularly. I don't need to sanitize the outside of my refrigerator, but I do need to make sure it stays clean. Regular cleaning of non-food contact surfaces is really important. Aside from the fact that you don't want to work in a nasty kitchen, it prevents the buildup of dust, dirt, food residue, and other debris. It will also prevent the growth of pathogens, and it can help prevent a pest infestation. This is important, guys. Sometimes people might get sick and throw up or spray poo all over your establishment. I mean, I know it's gross, but it happens. If someone vomits or has explosive diarrhea in your restaurant, it's got to be cleaned up correctly. Why? Puke and poop both carry norovirus, which is very, very contagious. So cleaning the area correctly can prevent food from becoming contaminated. It will also keep others from becoming sick. To be effective, operations must have specific procedures for cleaning up hazardous waste. These procedures must address specific action that employees must take to minimize contamination and exposure to food surfaces and people. It's critical that employees be trained on all these procedures. You know what? I think vomit and poop's a good place to stop. They will come back and finish up with chemicals and cleaning programs.